If we're investing in our people, in our teams, to upskill them, to prepare them for the future of work, how are we changing as leaders to enable, encourage, build the right teams around that? If we do it the same way we've always done it, we're not going to get the results that we want. So really what you'll hear tonight from two leaders of iconic brands in Canada, BMO and the Toronto Maple Leafs, is what are they doing as leaders to really bring that out in their teams?
When you think about your team, your workforce, Sheldon, and we know it's still quite early in your tenure, what do you see as some of the biggest opportunities and challenges that you face when you look at your workforce?
Right away, my priority was to try to set up our players for success and to get them thriving. I think one of the things that I said on my first day and my first presser was, I'm not in any way concerned with who or what we aren't and what our players aren't and what they're not good at, where we need to improve, but I'm more concerned about who they are and what they are good at. And I had to get that going and get that thriving. Whereas the greatest challenge I see, how then can we expand and get to the next level? And for us, then now that we have people thriving, we have built some trust and some confidence with the group, with the messaging that's coming from the coaching staff, to then now be able to work at the areas that may be holding us back and where we need to continue to grow as individuals and as a team. And that's sort of what we've been working at.
No, that's awesome. I love the point on focusing on what you're good at. I know that when we are coaching our own people here in the firm, there was probably a long time ago a legacy of always looking at things that people were not doing well. And that's sometimes human nature, but if you really focus on what people are good at and really celebrate those things and not force them into roles that they're not good at, that's really important. So thank you for that. Okay, so Darryl, what are your views on hiring people with skills relevant for the future versus upskilling your current talent and giving your team or people the resources that they need to take on those future roles and responsibilities?
Yeah, I think, Diane, one of the traps we can fall into with a question like that is to ignore what I call to ignore the and. Because if you just, there's a mathematical calculation and then there's the outcome of it. If you believe that, and I do, that almost 100% of jobs will change starting 5 years ago till about 10 years from now, whether they have to get accustomed to a new system or a new way of dealing with clients, that we didn't think there'd be a day where there's no counter and they're walking around with iPads and they can figure out how to help you with your planning instantly standing up in the corner over coffee. Like, that's totally changed. That's a minor change relative to some of the changes that you have. But if close to 100% of the jobs are going to change, it actually isn't possible to say, well, over that same period of time, you're going to deal with the whole thing by attrition and by replacement.
Right.
You have to have a view that upskilling is part of your strategy, is our view. We take it very seriously. But it's in addition to the infill that we've got from new hiring. So we look very hard for all the skills that you do, and there's lots of good research, as you said, on this.
Sheldon, can you tell us a little bit about how technology is changing the way that the game is being played and some of the tools that you're using in the way that you coach?
Well, it certainly is becoming more and more prevalent in all regards, to the point that now the NHL is going to be implementing player tracking, which is going to track all the movements of both the player and the puck and all the different things that happen throughout a game, and it's going to give a mountain of information every day, and how that's going to be interpreted remains to be seen. But every single player, when they arrive for the game, has their own individual iPad that is put in their stall, that's loaded with all the information that they need for that opponent that we're playing. It used to be that you'd have paper posted all over the walls for them to read, and most of them would ignore, myself included as a player. But now it's there, it's digitally, it's on an iPad, which they love, it's right there, and we're seeing just the engagement of the player to read and follow the information, mainly because they're driving it. information is so readily available, and our video coaches that in the locker room, they know the type of things I would like to see, so they're rewinding the play and then playing it back at my feet. So if you're watching the game, I'm not just staring at my shoes. I am trying to get a feel for what just happened.
Sheldon, what's the one question you always ask when you're looking to hire someone?
I said earlier that we'd like to talk about who the people are rather than who they aren't, but I do find that asking someone about their greatest weakness is a revealing answer. Of course, then you can tie it into what efforts they're taking to improve upon that.
Okay.
It's a bit of a riff on this, actually. So it's similar. It's what if we do this? If I decide to work with you, what could go wrong? Like what could go wrong, and what are we going to do to mitigate it? And it might not be that person's weaknesses alone. It might be that we haven't really thought through the construct of what we're asking you to do or the job. But what could go wrong, and how are we going to avoid that from happening?
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about culture. So you have 45,000 employees in your organization, and you've talked about your upskilling journey. We know that you're on a journey of doing some great things out there in the marketplace and innovating. Can you talk about this aspect of cultural change in the pursuit of your business strategy, Darryl, in particular as it relates to the upskilling conversation we have?
Cultural change is hard. Our purpose statement is to boldly grow the good, comma, in business and life. And when we did it, our people co-created it. So we did 10,000 interviews. We built it from the bottom up. We didn't go ask our customers what we should be. We asked our people what we already are. And so when we put that together with the sort of mission to be a little bit more edgy and more competitive at the same time, we found that we could get that culture change moving. We're very proud of the trajectory that we're on right now. So I guess the message would be culture change is hard. It's really important to recognize what you're good at while you're trying to get better at other things.
So Sheldon, with this sort of backdrop of constant change, how do you build this culture of trust during this period of time?
Well, I think you're right in that a lot has changed, not just in the rules, the salary cap being what it is, but also I think the caliber and the skill level of the player and the athlete is far greater now. Now players are scoring goals on the regular by picking up the puck on their stick and wrapping it into the net, the lacrosse goal that back when I was playing, it was an alien that did that. It was just so, nobody could even...
When you watch tape from the 70s and 80s, you see it, right? Like you go, oh my God, I didn't think we were that slow.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's technology. That's not the
There you go.
But the biggest thing I would say that I've learned is I can't forget about the staff, because that really is what drives it. And that's been perhaps my biggest area of growth, where I spend most of my time. Is I think as a hockey coach, you focus on the players, and you have to deal with that. But we have an army of people that are responsible for creating the conditions for our players to excel. And I have to make sure that that's a big priority for me as well. And that wasn't necessarily the case when I first began. You just thought, they're hired to manage the equipment or to keep the players healthy, and they're going to do their thing, and I'm going to worry about the players. Well, I've grown a lot and spent a lot of time on recognizing that I have to involve everybody, including the staff, and prioritize the staff, and we've seen a lot of benefits in that area. So in terms of managing all the change and everything that's happening, it's engaging all of our people.
Thank you to Sheldon and Darryl for your authenticity, for sharing your views and your thoughts, for bringing yourselves to the table today with our audience. We very much appreciate you being here. Thank you.